Ugh.
You just send it in the last couple minutes? No,
Yeah, I
no
was
two.
just in case somebody was having issues linking in and they needed another link, I just sent the agenda.
Okay, I'm just going to print it real quick. Yeah, I hate to have people miss, the beginning of this meeting because we're going to have an overview of what we're doing, but maybe we'll just wait another minute or two and then start. Just saw Rhea flash on.
Rhea?
Hi, I'm here.
Rhea.
Cool.
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. Glad you're here.
So, what do you think if we just start and I think people will catch on pretty quickly when they show up. And Karina's a little iffy anyway. So it's kind of like just Claudia right now and Jonathan. I think that we're not sure about. Well, let's go ahead.
Said he would be working to step away and. Six, Brent Chergaskis.
Here.
Chair Steve Caro.
Here.
Board members Andrew DeWart.
Here.
Treasurer Ron Mitchell.
Here. Here.
Board member Barb Hart.
Here.
Board member Rhea Ortner.
Here.
Great, thank you. And if Claudia and Jonathan show up and Karina, I'll add them to the notes.
Okay, sounds great. I don't see anybody I don't recognize here, but I'll just call for public comment if anybody wants to make any. Please just announce yourself. Okay, I think we're good with public comment. We have a consent agenda for the approval of the September 9th meeting minutes. Don't know if anybody has any discussion about those.
No, I do not.
Okay, seems like we're good with those. Could we, I've forgotten now if we just do all in favor or if we call that to vote.
We can do an all in favor, a unanimous agreement.
Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Okay.
We have that passed. And we are doing a discussion item for the budget discussion. And our plan was to have as much discussion as we need within our time period, and then to move it to an action item so that we can vote on the operating budget and the TIF budget. And to start it out, I just wanted to give an overview of how I thought this meeting would go. Is starting out, I think our goal by 11 a.m. today is that we need to have set our priorities for the projects we want to work on for 2021, both for operating and then also, for the TIF projects, but then we'll also pass the budget for our operating budget and for our TIF budget, and we will have voted on both of those by the end of the meeting. The way I thought we should do this is we'll start with the operating budget, which in some ways is more straightforward and simpler. And then once we get that one set, we can move on to the TIF projects. And I'd like to go around the room with that and have everybody list their potentially top 5 projects that they'd like. And I think in the order they think they're most important would be helpful for us in case we get some with all the same number of votes. And then we'll tally those up and make sure that people are in agreement with the what we come up with as our top projects. I think realistically, we should probably aim for about 3 to 4 big scale projects, or something that we're tackling anew that's a big project, whether it's an existing project that we've talked about or a new one, and then possibly 2 to 3 smaller or easily managed ongoing projects. So we keep our focus for 2021 pretty narrow, but perhaps a little bit more scope than we did for 2020. And so with that, I guess I'd like to start with discussing the operating budget, and really to start out by Hope giving us a little overview of the numbers that were in the spreadsheet we sent around, and give people a chance to clarify things and ask questions of that before we run through the line items one by one. So Hope, if you don't mind, just to give us an overview of the operating budget and the funds.
Sure. Well, hopefully everybody is looking at the 2021 proposed budget spreadsheet that has 3 tabs on it.
Well, hey, it's Marta. Were you going to share your screen? Because you could also pull it up.
Oh, yeah. Great. Good idea.
Wait, my spreadsheet only has 2 tabs. I guess I have the wrong one opened.
You know what? I just created an economic and infrastructure spreadsheet this morning and added that tab in just so that it would help anybody looking at it work with it a little bit easier. Hold on for a second. Share content. Good. I have to work from it, not from the WebEx. I need to kind of just look at the spreadsheet that I'm looking at. So we determined that next year in 2021, we'll potentially receive $30,000, and that's in the mill tax. I just received a response yesterday from Mandy regarding what specific ownership taxes are. I'll incorporate them in. They're not going to have a huge effect necessarily on our budget right now in our conversation. The interest we're determined is about $2,000. Currently, I think I expressed that we're getting several $100s less in interest each year. So I think that basing this off of past interest is reasonable. Currently, our interest balance is $1,358.85. So I feel comfortable going for $2,000. So Steve and I talked and we discussed $32,000 being a reasonable amount of funds for the operating costs this year or in 2021. I don't have all the information here for 2019. I'm still acquiring that. And a lot of the information I just recently put in for this year to date, and it was a balance as of 9/9/20. So, so far this year, we've acquired $2,210 in legal fees In the past, the DDA has not had a line for legal fees. I suggest adding that line and giving the amount in the budget as $4,000. All of these are just based on where we are and what we're working with. The office rent, $600 as opposed to the $1,800, because I'm finding that 10 times at HubNet is great. It's about $595 for 10 sessions every month for the year. So I just guesstimated it to be $600 just in case there was a slight price increase in office space rental. IT, that's speaking to a lot of stuff that Randy Lee helps us with. But really, Spafford is the person that links up with Randy Lee to ask any IT questions for us. So instead of $250, I put it down to $100. I don't think we'll really need much assistance, but I think it's good to have some funding in there. The website, I believe, is really now an economic and infrastructure program that comes out of TIF funding. So the remainder you'll see in the other part of the spreadsheet as well is $5,482.57. For accounting, we have had $600 as our typical annual budget. We're having Tanner respond to a lot of questions. We could have other accounting issues come up in the future. So my suggestion is to have a budget of $1,200 for that. The DDA secretary in the past, I think last year was, in 2020, it was $20,000. I suggest putting it to $22,000. The election, we have a balance of $5,560. I'm not totally sure with that line. So I put 0 because we won't be having an election, maybe just paying off from last year. In office supplies, I haven't spent too much money in office supplies. Thus far, I suggest $100. I do a $25 copy card at Business Connection, and that gives me 500 copies that it'll take us several years to get through, I'm sure. So I feel pretty comfortable with $100 there. Postage and shipping, again, I haven't spent too much money there. I can almost see where $100 is a nice kind of safe number to put. Boulder County tax collection, I'm just basing this so far off of last year's budget and learning more about that now. Bank fees, we did incur one bank fee this year, so that's why I'm suggesting keeping it at $50 as well as in prior years. Advertising, I'm suggesting $500. I don't have all the clear budget receipts for that at this point, but I think $500 is a safe number to say. Printing and copying is $75. It's very much along with office supply because I see this as something that I would get from the Business Connection, and that would also, I included printing in my idea for office supplies. Annual conference training has always been $1,000. I just kept it at that. Annual membership dues, we just paid $395, for example, for DCI. I think it's a worthy investment. So I would just adding a couple dollars in the event their price or membership fees increase in the next year. The business grant for $11,475, I know that we add it in as income at the top and then take it out as an expense down here. But technically, I would like to talk to Tanner about another way of mapping out that grant because it's not DDA income. It is a grant that we manage for Boulder County economic development. Infrastructure, last year, the board surmised to request $677,000 for projects. And that is why to be determined is in that spot right now. So because Rhea is not, oh, should I keep going on or did you want to stop with the operations? Because that's basically operations before getting into over here, the economic and infrastructure funds or TIF funds. You're quiet, Steve. You're on mute. Uh-huh. You're still on mute. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I feel like we should just stick with operations for now, and
Okay.
we'll tackle the rest later. And just yeah, I didn't know if we should probably just go around the room and see if anybody had questions, because we may answer each other's questions as we go. But if I could start maybe with Barb, with Andrew, to see if you have any questions or comments about this budget.
No, I don't have any questions. I think the DCI is worth it. Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward so far.
Okay, well, thank you. And if usually I go last, but I had a number of questions that other people might have. So I was thinking if I could just chime in on the legal fees, Hope, I thought that 4,000 may be a bit high, really, because I feel like this year was, certainly higher than we've been in the past. And we had a number of issues going on that we reached out to Paul Benedetti about. And I don't think that that's going to be an ongoing thing at that level. So I was thinking, my thought is maybe we could reduce that one somewhat, perhaps 2,500, but whatever people feel. But I just wanted to point that one out. For the web, do I understand that we're moving that out of the operating budget and that will be a TIF project or a TIF item? Okay. And for advertising, I was wondering if we had spoken this year about advertising being a TIF project, kind of under business services and support. So I didn't know if we wanted that to remain in our operating budget or to move it out of there, but that's just a question for us. And the annual fees, oh, go ahead. The annual fees, a tiny thing, but I feel like maybe just to bump that up to 450 in case DCI does do that wouldn't be a big increase, and then we have it covered in our budget, but I'm okay either way. And then just to mention that infrastructure, that was the bottom line item, really isn't part of our operating budget, but that was maybe just in there for the overall budget idea.
So if you look at the top, it says loan proceeds resolutions.
Okay.
Right here. Again, that is the resolutions when we engage funds. So we had determined this number last year. This is kind of where we are. So what has been done in the past, this is just a spreadsheet template that I've used from prior years. So the funds up here then get decreased out of infrastructure down here.
Okay.
So that's why
I see.
that.
Okay, that makes sense if that's the template that you were using.
Yeah.
I just didn't want people to be confused by thinking that's part of our operating budget.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Rhea, could we hear your thoughts or ideas on this?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
All the comments, looks good, thanks.
Okay. And Brent, how about your input?
Yeah, real quickly, I agree with you on the legal. The two things I wrote down were legal, and then understanding the election situation. So that was unclear the way you described that. Hope, can you describe where we're at on that?
Not totally, because I don't have everything about what's been paid out and what's left over. In that, it seems like from what I could piece together that there is a balance remaining in the election funding of $5,560. I'm not sure if that has been paid off or is going to be or come to us in the future as something we need to reimburse the town with or whatever. So I do know that currently in those funds there's 5,560.
You think we haven't paid off the bill from last year?
I have a feeling that we have. But this is what I could physically account for up until this point of 5,560.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, who else? Barb Hart, if you have any input.
I don't really have any input. It all sounds great to me.
Okay, thank you. And Ron Mitchell.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. With the legal fees, I would like to establish a category, a new category for this year, and that would be a investment policy development. And we would need, I think, to have a professional do that. And I'd like to see if we could budget $2,000 so we could have an investment policy within maybe the next 4 to 5 months. And then when our budget comes in for 2021, if we have money left over and we need to make short-term, or we could make short-term investments and even long-term ones if we decided to, I think we need that professional work done. And for me to do it, I think would be a bit of a conflict of interest. So I would like to put in, maybe reduce the legal fees and have an investment policy advisor work on an investment policy for us.
Can I ask a question, Ron? This is Rhea.
Sure.
My understanding is that most financial planners, these types of people, they get paid by a certain percentage of the funds that are invested with them. I don't see why we need to spend extra money on this up front.
Well, Hope and I did some research and called some investment counselors. There was a woman in who, well, she lived in there for a little while, but I think she moved over to Allen's Park or Estes Park by the name of Dana Edwards. And she said she would be willing to do something like this for a flat fee. And in developing a policy that leaves us free to select anyone else, when people are on commission like that, I don't think we really want to be tied to one company or one person in terms of short-term investments or any investments for that matter.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, Andrew.
Do you have the link for some of the kind of the broad brushstroke investment policies that we looked at that were from other municipalities, or a boilerplate investment policy that you could share?
I don't have it right handy, but Andrew and I have explored. There's quite a few other communities that have investment policies that we found, like almost 30 of them, and they vary depending on, they're tailored to each community's needs and their income and their potential budgets. And some municipalities, have very long-term goals. So I think Nederland does too in terms of water fund and sewer fund. So I don't have it, but we can certainly supply it, and people could do their own research on this. But I still would like to see if we could get the line item to have it done and be ready with a policy, and in the event we really need it, we do need it. And this was, by the way, Karen Garrity's suggestion when I proposed some short-term investments and they weren't well understood. I want to take the year and try and pursue some of those and see to it that everybody has a very good idea of how those would function, but that's something I would do on my own. This is a much broader policy idea. So Andrew, I can work on that, and I can send those links to anybody who would like to see them. And if you would, Rhea, I'd be more than happy to give them to you today.
Thank you, Ron. I think that makes sense. So Hope, are you okay to incorporate some of these changes? And we could, if everyone's happy with it, perhaps we could move this to an action item and vote on it?
Sure. And that would be, so from what my understanding is, it'd be reducing legal to about 2,000 or 2,500. Move the website, just remove that line, and I could add in that line, financial development, and add $2,000 to that budget line. And then you said increase advertising and business service support, or you wanted to move that into a TIF fund? Yes. Okay, sorry.
That was my thought, was the advertising could be part of our business services under TIF.
Okay. Under TIF, and then the annual fees, bumping them up to $450. That sounds great. And what I can do is make these additions after the meeting, and then we can approve it now, contingent that it's for your approval when I send out the amended budget sheet.
I was thinking that it would be great if you can plug, I don't know if the spreadsheet would do it, but if you could plug
Do it right
in
now?
these changes. Yeah, and just make sure that we come in under the 32 or at around that.
Okay.
Thanks, just to make sure that we're within our finance constraints.
Okay.
Are we including the 2,000 for
Yes.
the investment policy?
Yeah, in
Yes.
fact, I'll take out this number.
And I also have a suggestion. Do we have any lines for contingencies at all of any nature?
I don't see any, but if we're allowed to do that, I think that would be great for once we get the total here to try to put something in there.
One thing I wanted to just point out is in regards to contingency budgets, those are usually related to your TIF projects, but not to your operating budget. I'm just talking about the normal course of action with accounting.
Okay.
If you do a contingency budget, that's a little bit different. What you would want to do is bring a full new budget to your board and basically vote it in. Let's say your revenues are higher than you expected or expenses were higher. That's how you would deal with the need to adjust your budget. But contingency budgets are usually tied to projects that you would do with your TIF funding. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And would that be the same idea as not being allowed to have a miscellaneous line on this operating budget?
Well, you can do a miscellaneous line, absolutely.
Okay.
You wouldn't call it contingency, you would just call it miscellaneous. And you do want to, try not to make it too large.
Right.
But definitely you could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if we're at 31,175 now or whatever, and your goal is 32, you just do it.
Yeah.
Not a contingency, but a miscellaneous for the additional $800 something or whatever. And
yeah, that would be my thought too.
Okay. I need to get my calculator out.
To get it to go to 32 or what, if that's your ultimate goal.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. Sorry.
And I like miscellaneous. Good. That's fine.
Yeah, we have that in our budgets in my businesses.
Could you just confirm for Rita and I how much you're budgeting for office rent? It's a little hard to read.
600.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So this will be. Cha, 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 cha. What? Sorry. So it looks like we're 350 over.
So we can make the miscellaneous.
Oh, I'm sorry.
825.
Thank you. I tried to do that. Okay. There we go. Thank you.
Sure. Now, is everybody able to see this so that we know what we would be voting on?
I think we all can see it on the screen.
Okay. Great. Then if there is any, just want to ask if we have any public comment on this before we move it to an action item. Doesn't seem to be. And so maybe someone could advise me here, but would we make a motion to move this to an action item to vote on the operating budget for 2021? And then
Yes, you could do that. You could make a motion to make it an action item.
Okay.
I'll make a motion. To make it an action item.
I'd like to make a request for a 50-cent raise.
Okay, and in that, yeah, I wasn't sure if we were doing that in our budgeting here or what we were going to do. I would like to say that I do feel like it would be great to give Hope a raise. I've seen a lot of development over the last year with working with her, and I think we've worked out a number of issues in the learning curve, and I've followed up with her recently about some of the items that were causing issues, and I feel like she's doing a really great job. I wasn't sure that was part of this discussion, but since it's brought up, I would advocate for a raise for Hope. I don't know if other people, what their thoughts are on that.
So what did you use for a budget item, Hope? What is in here?
The 22,000, it's up 2,000 from last year.
Yeah.
So that includes the raise?
So it's about 50 cents.
Oh,
Great.
it's included in here.
It's included.
Right?
Yes. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Well, I wanted to clarify that because just by budgeting more money doesn't, immediately mean that it's a raise because it's an hourly position. So it depends on the number of hours. So that's why when I saw that, that change, I thought that was reasonable because I think, Hope, you do spend, you're working on a lot of things, and I think your time could certainly we could use more time of yours. So I just wanted to clarify that I feel like that, seeing it go from 20 to 22 doesn't mean it's a 10% raise. It's just a budget item at that point. But
sure.
But as far as a 50-cent per hour raise, I would be in favor of that personally.
That's not part of the budget. That's not part of your budget discussion, really, right?
That's what I was thinking. So, Hope, what I was going to say is we've budgeted for 22,000, and I think everybody has indicated they're okay with that budget item. And then I was going to be adding it as an agenda item to our next meeting to discuss a raise for you. If that seems like a better way to operate on this.
Sure. Sounds fine to me, Steve.
Okay, great. So we'll table that discussion about the raise for now, but I will be bringing it as an agenda item for the next meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to move this operational budget to the agenda to be voted on today.
Okay.
I second that.
Second.
Great. Well, let me just call your names. Barb Hart.
Yes.
Rhea Ortner.
Yes.
Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Andrew DeWart.
He stepped out for a minute.
Okay, Steve Caro.
Yes.
And Brent Chergaskis.
Yes.
I can't see if there's anyone else joined us, like Claudia or Karina, but it doesn't look like it. Okay. So the operation budget has passed. Well, that was easy.
Okay, great. So let's see, our next item here is to move on to the, whoops, let me find my notes, sorry. To move on to the TIF projects, and I guess the overview here is that I'd like to say that I think the best way to approach this is to assume we have no project, except any that, well, no, let's just assume that we don't have any projects set for 2021. And this is where we determine what projects we want to work on. And so, for example, we're kind of started on the parking, but it doesn't mean that we have to feel like we are going to pursue that for next year. Or, public art, I think, is something that we've started. And I feel like a lot of these are great projects and we will be voting to continue them. But I feel like we shouldn't be hampered by feeling like we have to keep all the projects that we're currently working on. Although I do feel like there's a lot of value in that because we have put effort into those. So just to have a pretty free mind approach to what it is that we want to accomplish next year. For Hope, I would say if we have any questions, or Hope, if you want to give any type of questions for Hope about the budget, about the money that we have, the funding, and my email from yesterday, I think that was laid out pretty clearly. But if people do have questions, if they could address those to Hope, she would be probably better able to answer those. So if anybody does have questions, please just speak up and ask Hope.
So I'll jump in. We're not really doing our 5 things or something like you mentioned yet on.
Not yet. Yeah. First, I just wanted to make sure everyone's clear on the numbers that we put out there and any questions about that. And then we'll move on to going around the room with people's priorities.
So it sounds like we need some more money in porta potties because we're not using the visitor center, right? Still, and we're still uncomfortable using the visitor center for a while. So we've got to continue that at a higher level based on some emails I saw in the last 48 hours. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
The town is trying to secure funds to improve the visitor center bathrooms, but and Miranda can probably speak better to this than I can. But it's not going to be done immediately. We want to retrofit it to be able to be as safe as we can during the pandemic.
So I think to answer that question, yes. I mean, ideally, we'd like to get funding to continue porta potties through the end of the year, because your current funding ends at the end of September that you gave us, which was the $4,120.
And all of that will be spent by that time.
Mm-hmm. And Hope, could you just tell us briefly about the grant, that $150,000 grant that approved for but haven't yet been funded? But my understanding was that was all generally to be used for COVID-related issues for us. And I think that, perhaps if we get funded in time, that could be, some of that money could be used for porta potties as an allowable expense on that grant. Is that true?
Sure. Yeah. So we will receive the $100,000 back in a reimbursement from DOLA. And that $100,000 will include the $94,000 that was spent in stopgap funding, consultation, and porta potty. So that'll give us roughly about $50,000 in COVID-related expenses in the future. So if we do, say, add more funds to the porta potties to continue until December, then we can technically ask for a reimbursement of those funds out of the $50,000. Also, if the DDA responds to the governor's letter to assist businesses through heat lamps or whatever out-of-the-box ideas, whatever we can relate to COVID within $50,000, we can request those funds back. And I just actually received an email this morning that all our documentation is incomplete, and they're just putting together the vendor contract at this time.
From that grant?
Yeah, from that grant. So I would assume that within the next 2 weeks, we can start sending in receipts for reimbursement.
And I have a question going back to what you were just talking about with the restrooms. So between Miranda or Karen and Hope, so could we spend some of that money on retrofitting or improving the visitor center bathrooms in the world of COVID, and that would pass the smell test, so to speak?
It would sound like it. It would sound like it to me. I can't guarantee anything, but it would sound like that to me.
So in town also has CARES funding that our plan was to use for that refitting of the bathrooms. However, if there can be a collaborative effort between DDA's funds and CARES, because CARES funds, we only get so much. If that's possible, then Hope, I would love to talk to you about a way in which maybe town and DDA could share that expense, because that's about $40,000 for those bathrooms.
To retrofit the bathrooms that we just redid 2 years ago?
To make them all touchless surfaces, yes.
What does a touchless surface in a bathroom look like besides the toilet flushing and the hand sink? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's toilet, hand, the dryers. It's also the doors, though, having doors that automatically open. Now, you could reduce that amount by $18,000 if you didn't have automatically opening doors and just using the foot pedal. But the problem with those doors is really, it's Chris's recommendation that we get, like when you have the handicap button and you're able to push it, the door opens itself. That's the recommendation. If you're really going to do it, you might as well get all the touchless surfaces.
I mean, I understand that, but if it were my money, would I do that? And I would have to say no, because I mean, I think they're proving that the touchless thing is not how the disease or the virus is getting spread as much as they at first thought. So I would, if you could save $18,000, I would, on the others make sense to me. The toilet and the sinks and even air dryers, that's okay. I wouldn't spend $18,000 on doors if it was my money, just my opinion. But I'm a fan of trying to get those bathrooms back up and open. I mean, porta potties are not very fun in the winter.
And they're expensive. We're seeing that, we're spending a lot of money just to keep the porta potties as opposed to retrofitting.
Yeah, the image of that is weak, to say the least, and they're never going to look good or have a good representation of town. So that's just my opinion. So I'm motivated to get the bathrooms up and running again, for what that's worth. I hate driving by and seeing porta potties every day. It's just not very nice.
Thanks, Brent, for your input. I'm wondering if we're getting off track here with the porta potties, because I also feel like it might not be it would be coming from grant money, probably one way or another, as opposed to us budgeting for it.
Well, it sounds like you have to budget for it. That's why I brought it up. So I'm sorry for getting sidetracked, but I thought that it came across today that we don't have enough money in the budget, so you got to increase it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and okay, for sure.
I'd make that assumption too, to budget it as well. Just because it's budgeted and then we get reimbursed for it, and it just keeps everything in front of us.
Sure. And I could see that being a budget item like, business services, that it is helping the downtown businesses to get that up and running, because they're not letting people use their facilities. So I feel like it could end up as part of a broader TIF project for next year.
Quick question, why are the bathrooms at the visitor center not available? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Because we don't have the concern is that, you know, with because a part of the refitting is also this like a cleaner and an air circulator. We don't have the people to clean it. We're already short staffed. And then there's also a concern that if our staff get sick, you know, Public Works Streets only has 4 people. So we just felt like at this time we cannot, when COVID first happened, the cleaning requirements were almost daily. So I mean, we can obviously go back and talk with Chris, but I think the concern is we just don't have the people to be cleaning the bathrooms.
And for the amount of money that we're spending on porta potties, is it just too much logistical to hire somebody to clean them every day? Is that just too much logistics to work out?
So we can't ask AeroPure. AeroPure can't service them more than twice a week. So I guess if we're hiring someone, it's hiring someone within town. And I guess I'm not really sure how AeroPure would feel about that.
I guess it meant hiring somebody to clean the visitor center's bathroom every day, or is that, I guess I'm confused.
I mean, yeah, that's something, you know, again, I think it comes down to, we don't have the personnel and we also don't have the money to be adding on a staff specifically to cleaning bathrooms. But if that's an area where the DDA feels like they can step in and assist, I think Nikki and Chris would be open to having a personnel. I mean, when COVID first started, there was a lot of inconsistent information about I think, Brett, you touched on this, about bathrooms and surfaces and the spread of COVID. That has obviously changed since we originally closed down the bathrooms. But again, our manpower issue has not changed.
Right. And I see we have about $4,200 budgeted for porta potties in the spreadsheet that Hope has up. So yeah, that's not going to go very far for personnel to clean the existing bathrooms, right? I mean, you would need a lot more money than that to hire somebody on part-time to help.
Yeah, and these are funds from this past year. So we don't have a line in there for, I didn't go through and budget money for any of these. That's your discussion. Is AeroPure the only business to go through?
No, they're not.
I was thinking about it, but she said pretty much, you know, just because they service our area. You know, getting a place from down below and then asking them to service it more frequently is probably not an option. So she said that AeroPure is really our only option.
I mean, I guess I just agree with Brent. I don't like looking at porta potties either. I mean, if there's a way we can still be within the CDC guidelines for bathroom cleaning and just use the visitor center's bathroom, it's like, I would be interested in spending more money on that than porta potties next year or through the winter and next year. You know, I just don't have an idea of how much it would cost for the daily cleaning of the bathrooms and who would do it. You know, like we hired for beautification, we hired a local person to do all the watering and weeding and gardening. I mean, is it possible we can find a local person, hire them as an independent contractor to clean the bathrooms every day? And what are we looking at in terms of money?
Couldn't we combine something and give somebody a full-time job?
That was the initial idea with beautification, was that we could potentially split a job with the town. The town would use the person from October until May. The only one thing I did hear was ProSab was looking for someone to manage and take care of Gershio Fields trash removal and such, but that was just mentioned at the last meeting. But and I honestly, I think our mistake with beautification this past year was hiring somebody that already had a full-time job. That's why we're seeing $10,563 as the balance, because they were unable to work the 15 to 20 hours a week that were available for that position. And actually fulfill all the intentions of that position at this time. Great employee, just had a full-time job and couldn't keep up with it.
Excuse me, everybody. I'd like to cut in because we have just over an hour to finish our budget. And I'd rather just put this into next year's budget as part of another program or as its own line item and deal with the particulars at another meeting.
Okay.
If we could move forward. What I was hoping for now was just for people, if they had any questions about the overall budget number that we had presented by email of the, I think it was about 872,000 for next year's budget that we have available to budget for. I don't know if anybody has questions on that or before we got into our priorities.
I think it's really hard to put a number on it when you don't know which projects you're going to pick. So I think the projects are the next logical step before you can agree to that amount.
Yeah, sure. Well, that amount is what our revenue should be for next year. So that's the amount of money we'll have to spend. And then I agree with you, Barb. We want to move on to prioritizing what projects we all feel are most important. And then once we do that, we'll go back through and try to apportion this 800 something thousand among those top priority projects, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. We don't have to use all of that money, though.
Correct.
We can leave some of it there for the future.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And we'll keep getting more money in the future, but you're right. We don't have to spend it all.
Okay.
But it's good to have a budget that, at least incorporates a majority of it, I think, if we can do those projects, if we can really get going on them.
Okay.
So it sounds like we don't have really any questions or don't need to spend more time on the overall dollar amount. So if we could go around the room, I'll call on people. And what I was thinking is we could do our best. Maybe Hope, you could help out too, to tally people's top priorities. And from that, we could hope to find a good consensus among us of which projects would be the best.
Sure.
Great. Let's see. Rhea, are you okay to go first?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I definitely think we should continue beautification. And I think what Hope said, having somebody who can fulfill the full job would be better. Like one thing that could happen this fall would be nice, which probably apparently we have money but no time, is putting fall mums in, all the baskets anyway. Definitely want to continue beautification. The public art plan, that money has already been allocated, so I don't know if that needs to be part of our budget or not. And then wayfinding and signage, I really want to see that happen. And that, can go hand in hand with the public art. So those are my top three. Of course, we've been working on parking. So the Big Springs parking, I want to see that continue. See, I'm not really looking at a full list of projects on this screenshot, but anyways, that's my input so far.
Okay. Well, thanks, Rhea. And just to clarify, I didn't write this in yesterday's email, but I feel like we should have, 3 to 5 top big priorities, and then we may end up with a few smaller ones that are sort of on autopilot, more or less, like beautification might fall into that category, or other smaller projects that we'll find when everyone's going through their priorities. So I think it's fine to, just pick your top ones and sort of prioritize them. And also to say a little, like Rhea, like how you did, to talk a little about why you think they're important, or things like that might help others with their thoughts. Brent, are you okay to go next?
Sure, I'll unmute myself here.
Thanks, you are unmuted now.
Yeah, so I wrote down 4 or 5 things. Obviously, I think continuing getting the parking on Big Springs done. I think we need to not take our foot off the gas and try to get something big like that done. Mm-hmm. I really believe what we called wayfinding - signage project, we need to try to finalize. I think that it can look good and be a good representative of town. I'm a big fan of still trying to do something at the intersection at the BNF and across from the bank, so you can turn out of the BNF to the right or the left. We've got to get a turning lane there. I don't think it has to be the full roundabout that costs, a lot of money, but I think trying to rearrange the concrete sidewalk there and have a turning lane would be a big thing that people would really notice. And then then I add on the visit, let's work out what we've got to do for the visitors to get the visitor center functional. Because I'm not a fan of porta potties and I'm a fan of clean bathrooms. And if we have to fund a little bit of that, work with the town to do so, I'm in favor of doing that. I think bathrooms go a long way, and porta potties are never going to be clean because you can never lock them at night, and it's just not a great solution, especially in the winter. And then the fifth thing I had written down was the Gercio field. Did that electrical upgrade finally happen, or is it not completed?
It's not complete at this point.
It's not. So I'm still a fan of having electricity down there, and then really working on a vision for what Gercio is going to look like at some point when I'm older and grayer.
Thanks. And Brent, I wanted to mention too, I think I was a little misleading with my original statements, but I think something like the electrical box down at Gercio Field is something that we're so far into that we will carry that over.
Okay.
It's not like we would stop something like that, but
So
maybe something. Yeah.
Change my Gercio comment to what's the vision down there and what are we going to do? Because nothing's happened to speak of in a while.
Okay.
So I'll send you what ProSab presented to the DDA. Hopefully it's in the minutes. They sent a really nice presentation of the GoCo grant they just filled out.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. I had to jump in and help my kids for a while.
Okay.
But I'm back.
No problem. Great. So Andrew, I don't know when you left, but we were just starting to go around the room and list our top priorities and speak a little bit about why we think they should be in next year's projects. I don't know if you're ready to go, but you could go next if you'd like.
Is that directed at me, Steve?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, I think, and I apologize, I've been out, so I missed the last 20 minutes, but I think as far as priorities go, that are the parking, Ron, did you bring up where we were at with JVA and with Flagstaff?
No,
we could probably do that at the next meeting too. This is more of like, do you want to fund it?
Yes, we want to fund it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Andrew, yeah.
Yes.
And Andrew, sorry, I think let's come back to you. I didn't realize you missed 20 minutes, so
yeah,
I'll give you a chance to.
My wife is at an appointment, so I've got both kids here.
Okay.
I had to take care of them for a second. Yeah.
I'll let you settle in a little.
Okay.
Barb,
Thank you.
maybe if you could go next, Barb.
Yeah, I think definitely just a little bit of the information we have on the governor's request for COVID fund and how to use it and how to help the businesses locally. I guess right now that's still going to be top of my list because there are still so many businesses that are struggling, and winter's coming where we typically see a lot less business, and a lot of them don't know how they're going to make it through. So how that looks, I don't know, but I would say that is number one on my list.
Okay.
And then beautification is just a given. Public art, I do think we're we're making progress on that, so I don't know if it has to be on the list. The website, we really need to get going on the website. I told Hope I would be willing to help some with that since I have some web experience and maybe could help come up with ideas at least of what people would be looking for. Wayfinding is important, but I'm for wayfinding that is digital and not signs all over the place. And that was introduced to the DDA many years ago. And I hope we can go back and visit that to have the kiosks and digital information available to people on their phones and electronic devices when they're visiting town. And then I know it's one more, but yeah, the visitor center and the bathrooms, we have to, and maybe that falls into the COVID funds anyways, but we have to get those operational. I agree. we don't need to invest that kind of money in how to open a door because no one else has invested that money in how to open a door, and we use the restrooms everywhere else we go, and we have to still open the door, and then we sanitize our hands. So those are my priorities.
Great, thanks, Barb. Let's see, Ron Mitchell.
Okay. I've got, wait a minute. Can you hear me, Steve?
I could not hear you.
Can you now?
Yes.
Okay. Here's my list. I think we should finish all of the projects that we've started and give them priorities as we have. Second thing is finish the Big Springs parking. Definitely get the Big Springs project done, hopefully within this year before the snow flies if possible. Then I have an idea that for next year, a simple project would be, I understand the Lakeview intersection is a mess. I'd like to propose a traffic circulation project that would be fairly simple. It would be a test. It would be making Lakeview one-way east from 119 to Conger and having exit from a parking center parking lot only at the east driveway. And I've talked to a lot of people who do this now, just locals, but we could try it from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I think a budget item of about 20,000 would do it. You need flaggers, you need signs, to see if we can solve some of the problems with traffic circulation improvement, which would make it much easier to make left and right turns off of Big Springs when they get up there. And so I've gone to the extent of questioning and asking a lot of people about it, including the owner of the shopping center, Steve Kibo. He's willing to do the trial. I've also questioned Dan Ball, who owns the grocery store. He's willing to try it. But I think we would need to reach out to everyone in the shopping center and beyond before we did it, and we'd have the winter to do that.
Okay.
I don't like porta potties more than anybody else. That third item was with everybody else, do something. And if we have to subsidize somebody to do the cleaning at the visitor center, that would be fine. But I think next summer we could increase the number of porta potties, even though I don't like the looks of them anyway. I noticed they got a lot of use. People appreciated them, and under the current COVID conditions, I think we could pay somebody to independently work with a purveyor. I don't think that Air is necessarily interested in anymore. They said they don't have the, and I think we could create a job, a full-time job for someone who could combine watering the flowers, cleaning the porta potties, and possibly doing some of the spraying or the steaming of the noxious weeds. I thought that program was really good. I hired them to work for me independently. I would like to see some more funds go to the noxious weed project. And if we could have one contracted person to work on all three of these projects, I think we could do very well in all three of those categories. So combining the beautification and weed control projects, and we could use I would volunteer my water truck, or we could buy one. Then I'd like to continue the dialogue with Chris Malley for the use of the triangular piece of property west of 119 to use for additional parking in the future, recognizing that Stacey Johnson and his business have a vested interest in the area there. I think we should begin a dialogue about a second bridge in town that joins Conger and Snyder. And that's it. These are the items that I think we should work on. They're all pretty much entwined with what everyone else has said so far. I guess it's just prioritizing. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Let's see. And then I think I'm the last one to go. I feel like some of the top projects that we should work on is finishing up the parking on Conger. That's a great one, I believe. And we're not so much in financially yet, but we've spent a lot of time and made, I think, a lot of progress in determining what we need to do there. So I think that would be a great one that we could finish up pretty early in 2021 when the weather allows. I think wayfinding is fantastic for the town, or would be, and I think that we don't need to get into the details so much of these, but Barb, I like your idea of sort of exploring digital kiosks for the pedestrian-based wayfinding. But in any case, wayfinding as in general, I think is a great one to go forward with. Public art, I think, is really wonderful and will engage the town nicely, and I think it will really enhance the appearance of town. Beautification, I've never been a huge fan of it, but I do understand that most of the businesses in town say they really like it. And it's one of those that I feel like is more or less on autopilot with steering it and guiding it in different ways. But I'd like to continue with beautification in some way. And the one other I think that would be really great to develop for this coming year is sort of business incentives and business infrastructure. Business services. Sorry, I said the wrong thing there. But like business services, which I see as a broad category under the TIF that could easily incorporate all of our COVID-related retrofitting, PPE, getting that out to businesses that need it. Things like that. In addition to, I would see the website falling under that business services category. So I think that's a big sort of catch-all that would encompass helping businesses in town a little more directly than we have in the prior years. And the last one, which I feel is doable because it's a very long time horizon and won't take a lot of our time in 2021, is to continue to pursue that Lakeview intersection, as a few other people have mentioned. And I could see Ron's idea being one thing that we do. Certainly hooking up with CDOT and getting people on board with what's involved in moving that forward if we are to do a traffic circle there. But really just keeping that as a broad category of the Lakeview intersection, I think would be a good one to pursue. So I think that's all of my input on that. And I don't know, Hope, if you were able to get any sort of a tally. My paper looks like a war scene here, but I think we might be able to group it together in a couple minutes here and kind of get back to people with what the most popular projects were. Hope, does that sound okay with you?
Thank you. I couldn't unmute myself with my screen share. Thanks, Miranda. Yeah, it seems like everybody has agreed on the, beautification for the most part, wayfinding, Big Springs being completed, and different business services like the website and public art. So it's basically all the same projects that we have, just moving them forward and removing, say, event support, unless that would be considered business services as well.
I think it could be quite easily.
Okay. Yeah, so that's that's what I saw. Big Springs wayfinding, public art beautification, and then business like services, and the Lakeview intersection was mentioned by 2 people or 3 now.
Okay.
I would just chime in on that. I would like to chime in on the Lakeview thing. We had CDOT come and do a study and met with them a couple years ago. And I think you can do it a lot cheaper than a roundabout if you just get rid of the sidewalk on the right side or move it over a few feet and make enough room for a right-hand turn lane. And that project was not very expensive. And I know Mark Stringfellow had done a fair amount of research on that and had some type of a plan. And I haven't talked to him about it in over a year, but I don't think it was super expensive.
Brent, the town actually worked with CDOT, and CDOT did a proposal for ways to improve that intersection. And they gave us 3 or 4 options which I believe, were shared with the DDA. And then each one sort of had pricing. Now it is, like you said, it's a couple years old now, so pricing would likely change. But if you all still need to see that or haven't seen that, town staff, we can get that to you if you need it.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And Brent and I were both on the board at that time. And Brent, I don't know if you remember that, but they came up with the traffic circle being the best balance of money and improvement. And the only thing better than that was a stoplight, which we all felt was a non-starter in our town at this point. But I remember there was a pretty clear, it was like an 11-page or more report they gave us or gave town that we saw. And it did say that traffic circle would be the best improvement. It would be way better than stop signs actually make things worse, which is not intuitive, but I trust their studies. But anyway, yeah. And so, but I think that's fine. Like the Lakeview is something that we might not have to put a whole bunch of money into or time. And so if we can fit it in the budget, perhaps that could be a lower priority item for us.
If I can offer just a little bit more back history, the circle was considered to take about 5 years, and Chris Peltier said that he kind of put it on their list of things to do. And the board agreed that in the meantime, looking at a right-hand turn lane and getting the engineering for that corner that you're talking about was something that was going to happen. Unfortunately, just the engineering for that corner was not located or hasn't been received yet. So the DDA was going to consider putting in a right-hand turn lane while waiting for this traffic circle to come to fruition in several years.
That's what I believe. That's what I remember as well.
Yeah, it happened in June 2019.
I remember that, and I thought that was not very expensive. It wasn't the ultimate solution, but just to not add any stop signs per se, but just do the right turn lane seemed like a doable project.
Well, and I want to just speak, this is Karen again, speak to the 5-year estimated time. That really depended on how we were going to approach this. If we were going to count on CDOT to come up with all the money and then we were going to try to get grant money, then you are looking at 5 years. If the town was going to take the lead on the fundraising and become kind of more of a big player in it, it's kind of a different story. We still need to get CDOT's approval, and that can definitely take time. And we do have to make sure, their engineers are on board. But it really depends on how you were to attack this animal. I just wanted to make that clear that the 5 years is very reasonable if we're talking about trying to get on their schedule, have them pay for it, and then us try to get grant money, whether it's through the TIP project or TIP funds or other Dr. Cog or DOLA funds. That definitely is going to take like a 5-year period. But what I think I've never heard in attending all these meetings is clear direction on what the DDA wants to do. It like Hope said, there was conversations about getting started on the project by dealing with that right-hand turn lane, also as Brent has suggested. But I think there still has to be that bigger conversation if you're talking about permanent large improvements to that intersection, what role, if any, the DDA would want to play in that piece of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Well, I feel like at this point it would be good to, first of all, do people agree with this breakdown that Hope just gave us of beautification, wayfinding, Big Springs parking, the business services, and public art? And then it seems like Lakeview had three mentions.
Can Lakeview just be included in the Big Springs since it's one street over?
I feel like it's possible.
Wouldn't it make sense to do it all at once?
No, I don't think that's necessary because Big Springs is more of a parking project and that's more of a transportation through town.
It's also your roads versus CDOT roads, so it really would be different.
Okay.
If we do this short-term study and see what the traffic circulation is like, that may have an impact on what is ultimately done. So I would encourage it to be a separate item, and that we try the short-term traffic circulation study and see what happens. I'm a great fan of trying things that don't cost a lot of money. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So with those in mind, and the Lakeview perhaps is below all the others in terms of the priorities, does the board feel comfortable moving ahead and trying to put some dollar values to these to make sure it fits within our budget?
Yes, and I would still lobby for the visitor center. We've got to work out with town some way of handling the visitor center situation better.
Yes, and Brent, I'm thinking that the visitor center could easily fall under the business services umbrella, because we could have all types of COVID related issues, under that essentially helps a lot of the town businesses. So I don't know if other people feel that way, but I could see that fitting well under business services.
Yes.
Okay. So Hope, I don't know if you want to maybe help out here, or because you know more about the numbers, but I'm thinking of maybe starting with, just as a starting point to get us somewhere, is plugging in what our current sort of budget numbers were for these items, since many of them are the same as they were this year.
Okay. So I guess we can start with wayfinding. Wayfinding, we have not spent much more than some administrative fees of a couple $100. So we have allotted $60,000 that has not been tapped into as a resolution. So is $60,000 enough, or would you add more funding to that out of the $872,000?
Well, Hope, I think let's start with what we kind of plugging in the numbers that we've had before, and then talk and see where we fall, and then adjust them a bit. But yeah, my input would be wayfinding has grown, with ProSab and SAB also interested in that, and more pedestrian level wayfinding. So I do feel like it would end up going higher if we could. But first, let's kind of plug in what we have and see where we are, and then tweak the numbers, if that's okay.
Sure. So for wayfinding, we have $60,000 in 2020.
Great. And then, do you want to just run down the list that we had of our?
Oh yeah, I'll just go through everyone. Okay, so on beautification, we budgeted $23,000. We have about $5,000 left after paying the city floral and some other invoices. So we have $5,000 left there. The visitor center repair, that's $139,000 still present. Wayfinding, we still have the balance of about $60,000. Gershio Field, it looks like we're getting some bills, and I determined that we have about $5,000 or $6,000 left over from that. Moving forward, Big Springs parking, we have about $193,000 or $187,000, I think, determined left over there. Fire department, we want to consider that for next year. Parking update we didn't do. Website, we have $5,482.57 remaining. Event support, $5,550. Out of the COVID stopgap relief fund, we have $5,000. Porta potties will have no balance remaining in that. Pedestrian sidewalks will have $70,000 that we'll be requesting in the future for that. And consultation COVID, we have about $3,195 remaining.
Okay, and what about public art? What did we budget in 2020 for public art?
So I wonder why that's not there. Sorry. For public art, we budgeted $5,050 in the end with the fees included. We've paid $2,500 of that, and we will have $2,500 remaining, and that's solely for writing the plan. But we don't have any money to leverage any kind of art installations or anything outside of the plan. So
Okay.
that might be a consideration for public art.
Yeah, so yeah, for sure, that if we want to move forward next year with actually doing it beyond the plan, we'd have to
Yeah.
add to that. One other thing, Hope, you brought up some good points I'd forgotten about, was the 70,000 that we've pledged to town for, we feel like would be for next year if they get their $350,000 grant on these crosswalks. So we need to kind of reserve this money. And then the 139,000 that we've pledged to town for the Jefferson Street. And I've forgotten, are there one or two others? Oh, the IGA with the fire department, if we feel like we want to continue with that for 2021, we should put in, some money on that, I think. And was there anything else that we had sort of pledged that we need to subtract out? Or were all of those already subtracted out when we got to our 872,000?
So the 139,000 was, the 70,000 wasn't. Neither was, and the fire department was at the amount that it was given last year.
Okay, so basically then we only need to further reserve about 70 or 75,000 for the crosswalks and maybe some additional on the IGA with the fire department.
Yes, and then we do have about 6,000 left over in the NEDPEDs, the repairing of the sidewalks. So I guess we could take out about 6,000 for that.
And my thought was, for those little amounts that are kind of remaining from old projects, if I was thinking we could leave those out of our budget process, and when we get to meetings, we can decide what to do with that money. And if it goes back into our funds, then that's what happens with it. If I just feel like that'll be cleaner and easier, because we don't really know where we stand with some of those items.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So
Hey, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Didn't we commit some money to help fund handicapped or sidewalks over by the Kathmandu Plaza and the RTD Park and Ride?
Sure, that's called the Jefferson Street. That's the visitor center / Jefferson Street repair project.
Oh, I see. Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, that says Johnson Street. I guess that's why I was confused. Or maybe I can't see the street. Yeah.
You are right. I'll change it.
Was there also, I'm trying to remember from the last DDA meeting, did you all agree to participate in that grant that Chris was writing for $350,000? Or is that the 70,000?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's in here at the bottom. It's called
got it.
pedestrian. So yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, so now I've made some notes based on what Hope was just saying, and it seems like we've got, if I could just recap, and Hope you could correct me on this or someone else, but I have the wayfinding that we had budgeted 60,000 for 2020. What I'm doing is just trying to figure out our baseline of what we had already thought about and budgeted for these things, and then from there we'll tweak them. For beautification, we had budgeted 23,000. The Big Springs parking, we had budgeted a bit more, but we've spent some. So I think we have essentially about 187,000 that we think is remaining on that. Although that could be a little higher, I think.
Yeah.
And then the fire department, what was this year's payment to them? Was it like 22 or?
Yeah, 22,847.
Okay, so that's just a good placeholder. Business services is one that I feel like will really change with COVID and things like that. And so we had the website where, we still have 5,000 that we've pulled for that going forward. Event services or whatever we call that was the 5,550. And I have COVID here, 5,000. Oh, that was left over from the stopgap.
Yes.
And then we have the porta potties / visitor center for the coming year with nothing budgeted yet. And then public art, we've already pulled the 5,050 for the whatever we call it, the overview of it, the plan. But then we would hope that, I think in the coming year, we'll be actually doing public art. And so we would want to add to that. Am I missing anything so far for kind of existing budgets? I think the other thing is Lakeview, which we don't currently have any budget for, but maybe throw that in here at the bottom. So I guess now it's a question of, how much time do we only have 30 minutes left and we need to vote in that time. But I guess perhaps if we could just go item by item now and have pretty quick discussions about them and what we think the budget should be. And sorry, I'm just going to do a really quick math. 83, 270, 293, 300. I mean, right now, just with these numbers, we're at about 305,000. So we do have a lot of leeway to, actually 375 if we include that 70,000 we pledged. So we still have a good amount of money that we can bump things up as needed. But let's just start with wayfinding. And
can I ask a question, Steve, before you start? Because
yeah,
I've been taking notes, and I've got 509,500, and that includes beautification, visitor center, Johnson Street repair, wayfinding, Big Springs parking, the IGA with the fire department, website. Maybe I've got that wrong. And 70,000 for pedestrian mobility. So what have I got on there that you're not including?
Can you say, I didn't hear the beginning of what you said. And if you could say your numbers too.
Yeah, so for beautification, I've got 23,000. For the visitor center, Johnson Street repair, I have 139,000.
But that's already taken out of our budget, so we're not considering that one.
Oh, okay. Well, just so you know, I'll need that figured in when we do the budget for the Board of Trustees, unless it gets spent this year. Okay, so that's where we're
spent this year.
Got it.
Yeah, so Kieran, that's one we've already taken out of our finances, so we don't need to, we will budget for it, but it's a set thing.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Sure, thank you for clarifying. So I was thinking for wayfinding, currently we have 60,000 budgeted, and Claudia and I talked to, well, Hope helped us contact both of our contractors, and they both said that pricing really wouldn't change much, and but that so I feel like we don't really need to adjust that too much, but based on what our current scope was. But I do feel like we've had a lot of interest from ProSab and SAB and others for maybe more pedestrian level wayfinding. Going into this, that was not our biggest concern. We were more concerned about street traffic wayfinding. And I'd like to encompass, have both of those be a good part of it. And I feel like the pedestrian part of it is great, as Bart mentioned, perhaps even electronic or something else. So I feel like it would be great to bump this one up, significantly. I don't really have any knowledge to say how much, but that's just my input on the wayfinding, that I think we should bump that up quite a bit to enable us to do a full wayfinding project. And we do feel like the time frame is such that we could get it done within 2021. So it wouldn't be like a multi-year budget from what Claudia and I understood. So anyway, with that being said, I wonder, Ron, if we could just go through real quick on these. Ron, do you have any ideas on the wayfinding or thoughts about bumping it up or not?
Yeah, this intersection of Lakeview, what the hell? Are you hearing me? There's all kinds of this intersection and wayfinding, where the path from the covered bridge, the pedestrian bridge at 119 and First goes over to Lakeview. the interaction of pedestrian cars and everything else, I think wayfinding plays a part in what we do temporarily, and I really want to get funding for this traffic circulation project to see if that would help with the wayfinding too. So I know it's the last item on the list, but I think we could do, if we could put a $25,000 to $30,000 budget in for that study for next year, I think it would really be helpful. And maybe you could take some of the wayfinding money and have a portion of that apply to the Lakeview Drive traffic study, because I think traffic circulation and wayfinding are really tied together in sort of subtle ways. So I'm very much want to see this project. It's a trial. Let's see what happens. Let's see if it affects wayfinding, because the pedestrian interchange at that intersection is just as bad as the traffic.
Okay. And Ron, sorry, I just feel like we're really short of time, so I'm going to cut you off there, but I understand what you're saying to add to that for the traffic study. Barb, I don't know if you have any input on the wayfinding / circulation budget.
I think the wayfinding, like I said, I'm all for it. I think it should be digital. As far as the circulation as a business owner in the shopping center, I'm not necessarily for going in one way and out the other in summer. I think the trial should be done in March, April, May, when town is slower, and get locals used to it.
Yeah, we're just trying to get to a cost. Like, if you look at the wayfinding at $60,000 now, and you consider all of the other stakeholders, should we bump it up to 120,000?
I think that would be a good start, but we don't know what it's going to cost for those kiosks or anything digital.
Right.
Without looking back several years, that was presented to the DDA many years ago.
Sure. And,
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, yeah, just because of time especially, but also that, Karen, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that our budget is, it's really pretty final when we're done with it. But as we get into projects, if we have good reason and good cause to change that budget item, we can go back to the BOT with a resolution to alter these.
That's correct. You can always do what's called a supplemental budget, where but here's the thing about the budget that we present to the Board of Trustees related to the DDA. The only thing we put in there regarding the TIP funds is how much you expect to spend for next year and how much you expect to spend in interest. So, and then there are places that we can sort of indicate how you might use that. But really the bottom line is that all we need is a good number to kind of put in there as a placeholder of what you think you will spend from your TIP dollars. So last year, for instance, for this year, for 2020 budget, what was put in the budget that was presented to the Board of Trustees was simply $500,000 with an estimated loan interest of $25,000. So I'm just telling you this so you have an idea of what we need to get to the Board of Trustees, which is a little different than what you guys are doing for your planning purposes, which totally makes sense. So that you can basically give us a total number that Rita and I can plug into this budget.
So when is that due to the BOT?
Well, we actually have already been through 2 work sessions with them. October 6th is when we are presenting in a public meeting the summary budgets for all the funds, including DDA, with a detailed ledger attached to it. So, and we're trying to get that information to them as far in advance of the October 6th meeting as we can, that they can digest it. Now, the good thing about your budget is it's pretty simple and it's pretty much been the same year after year with some changes here or there. So even if we get it to them, let's say by Friday, prior to the October 6th meeting, that's probably good enough. If you're not talking about any big changes to your operating budget. And again, for your TIF budget, we really just need the main, the size of the nut that you're hoping to tap into this year.
Okay, thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
I think that helps guide us a bit more. I feel like we don't really have time to run through and have everyone talk about each of these again, but perhaps if we could just state some numbers and see if people are okay with it or not. So for example, wayfinding, I'm thinking that 120,000 or even 100, because Claudia and I heard that we could do this in a lot of regions, do it in stages. So maybe in the coming year, we don't complete everything, and we could do phases of it. So I would be in favor of either 100 or 120,000.
100.
Okay. Anyone else feel like that's better, just to bring it down to 100 from 120?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, doubling your budget's pretty huge to do that in 1 year. So I agree with Brent.
I would
Great.
agree with Brent.
Yes.
Perfect. So let's keep wayfinding for set that at 100,000. Beautification. Does anyone feel like we should change that from the 23,000 we had?
I think we should keep it the same, and let's hope you feel differently.
I totally agree that we at least need to keep it the same, or even roll over the extra funding into it, because one of the stumbling blocks we had was watering the plants, and we might need to purchase something to help do that.
I like the idea of rolling unused funds in too.
Yeah.
And again, I just repeat, next year, I really would like to see us do some fall plantings and make sure, and I know we have money left over, it's probably too late now, but I really think doing some fall plantings of mums or other fall type plants would be really nice to do.
Yeah, that could still be done.
Okay.
And Hope, what about other maintenance type stuff? Sweeping and just sort of manicuring of stuff. You think that worked well? Ron Mitchell had mentioned maybe we should increase the weed steaming budget. It's a pretty expensive hourly rate thing, but it can be really effective, especially in sidewalk cracks.
I think I determined the price out to have some extra leeway this year. Unfortunately, because we didn't have somebody working the actual full-time hours, it's not giving us a true scope of our intentions for that job. So I would say, roll it into 25,000 with the potential of asking for more if we have to buy something to help the person who's watering. So I would say 25,000.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Now for the fire department IGA, I feel like that's something we all support, and I don't know what the numbers might be, but it was 22,847 for this year. Do you want to bump that up any? Keep it about the same? What do people think there?
Have they given us any indication of where that money was used this year?
Yeah.
So we asked,
Yeah,
yes.
we got a full report from them. It was,
It's fire inspection. It's based in fire inspection. It's helping Rick Henderson. I think the issue was, how much do we give them? I think they were taking a percentage of the TIF funds we received, but it might be beneficial just to put a cap, like a certain amount that we give them.
25,000.
25?
I'm good with that. I think that would cover our budget there. And then for public art, this is a big one because we haven't started anything yet. We're doing the plan, but Rhea, maybe you could speak to this, being on the committee. And
I mean, the plan is supposed to be done in early March. That's our new timeline. So if we actually want to have this plan done and see something on the ground, it might be nice to throw some money at it. In terms of, hey, look at this great mural, let's look at this great sculpture. I have no idea how much money is reasonable to ask the DDA to pitch in for actually installing something. At one point we had that mural project, and I don't really even know what happened to that thing.
You do still have $2,500 that was approved by the Board of Trustees that you can use for the mural project. I also wanted to mention, just having run public art programs for a long time, when we first started a public art program in one of the communities I worked in, we just started by asking for $10,000, which to me is a very modest amount of money, but it would give you some dollars that you could at least, have, allocated in your to funding. And there's some really cool things you can do with $10,000 for public art. So
I think that's a great number. How does everyone else feel about that?
I love it. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, Karen.
Great. That sounds good.
You're welcome.
And let's see, the next one is the Big Springs parking. And we've currently have about 187,000 going into next year for that. Ron, I don't know what you think, or Andrew, on that project.
Well, I know. Go ahead, Ron.
We are really ready to go. We need to get the BOT to fund the 197 or 87. That's a max. We've decided to work with JVA on the engineering. We're going to hire Lee Stadell as a surveyor to do the topo. And if we get this budget passed and make a resolution to the BOT, we are ready to start and do this project.
Okay, great. And so does the 187,000 seem to work for you guys?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's keep that as we've sort of noted it. The next thing I have under the umbrella of business services, which I think would encompass the website work, event support, COVID related projects like PPE, not sure what other COVID type things, and then also the porta potties or visitor center, chipping in to retrofit that. And I don't know if I'm missing some other parts. Hope, you seem pretty up on business services. If there's some other things you think should fall under that umbrella?
No, I mean, I think that if we look at PPE, I mean, I think there's unforeseen potentials, like the governor's letter requested,
Right.
heat lamps.
Right.
So those, that would maybe, instead of COVID consultation, it could be COVID related expenses. I mean, grant funding, like we did again, like doing a second grant funding for business owners. I know some business owners didn't apply because maybe when they started, they were doing okay, but as winter hits, it might be a different scenario. Purchasing or helping to purchase some of their bags or items that they need to use, say, to deliver food or to offer their product. I'm big into website development and helping the business owners get on the internet, because a lot of our business owners do not have that savvy of being able to market online.
Okay.
Those are my
Now,
thoughts.
thank you. And a question maybe for Karen here. For our event support and our and the website, I think both of those we had resolutions and we got money that we haven't fully spent yet. So will that, do we need to budget that again for next year, or do we just roll that money over automatically, Karen?
Well, because it's CIP money, accounting practices certainly allow you to roll it over, and you do already have approval from the Board of Trustees. But when we do our budget for the Board of Trustees, whatever we're planning to spend in 2021, we'll include in that lump sum. And it's okay. It's okay if some of that money has already been approved through resolutions and some of it hasn't. That's fine.
Thank you. That clarifies it.
You bet.
So based on that, just real quick, we have about 5,000 for website. Event support was the 5,550.
Can I just make a note that reads, I think to me, if I'm maybe a typo, 55,000 and event support?
That would be a typo, but Hope can fix that.
This is not a typo. 5,550?
Far right.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That's actually a dollar sign, not
Oh,
a
it is?
sign.
Okay.
Same thing, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, small screen.
Okay. So I'm thinking that, what do we want to do here I feel like the COVID related business services is going to be a big unknown coming up in the coming year. And I think COVID's with us for the coming year. And we're going to have things like, do we want to help with the retrofitting the bathrooms and all that sort of thing. I don't know what people are thinking about a number that we could put on this broad category of business services and COVID.
Would this, sorry to jump in, would this presumably include, outdoor heaters and propane for businesses?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, certainly, propane heaters go through quite a bit of propane. So I think, trying to figure out approximately how many heaters each business would use and, an estimation of propane usage would be a good place to start. And I think if we've got this number is 55,180, that's what we're talking about, or is this the event support?
No, we're just we're thinking what the total group, like what that total category might, how much money we want to budget for everything.
I think the number should go up given what it costs to use propane for propane heaters.
Sure. And we don't know really if we're going to be covering propane or just getting heaters for people or what. I mean, it's very unknown, but just as a general idea. I mean, I'm thinking like 25,000 to 50,000 in this business services umbrella. That could be the website, event support, COVID, PPE stuff, helping with the visitor center retrofit, unforeseen things.
Yeah, I'd say you're on the right track in that money. 30 grand or something like that for now as a placeholder. Would be enough.
I agree.
Okay. People feel okay with that for now?
Yes.
Okay, and we have 70,000. So let's see, did I miss anything? I feel like we
didn't put anything in for the Lakeview project, or just to at least study it, or I don't think it was $25,000, but I can't remember what. To do a turning lane.
The turning lane. I thought you were talking.
Or to study. Do you have some signage or rearrange something? You're going to spend some money. And to get, I think we should look at what we did, that thing, Karen. If you could send that to us, that would be helpful. But I don't recall that having a right turning lane was much more than $25,000 or something.
That's what I thought it was. Brent, I'm not real clear, but I thought it was a lot more, like 50 or 60,000 with the entrance.
I can't remember.
Yeah, because they said it was actually pretty big because of that ramp going, the hillside there. They were really going to have to build that up in order to be able to put a turn lane in to merge to the main one.
Well, you're going to also have to pay for the land, and that probably would mean a condemnation action.
We didn't hear about that, Ron, at the time. I'm not sure, but we don't need to get into that.
I think it's in the right of way.
Yeah, I think it was. I don't think there was any sort of dealing with the land. That wasn't a problem I ever remember.
It wasn't part of the study. No, I remember that clearly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see where we are so far here. We've got 100, 125.
We're at 553, 503.57. Can I just ask that the funding for business services is 50,000 if it's going to look mostly at COVID stuff, because we'll have about 50,000 from the DOLA funds to be reimbursed. So I know you have it at 30, but it makes sense to have it at 50 if we have reimbursement funds available.
Okay, and those are good up through 2021?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
Okay.
Good way to look at it.
So does anyone have any input like that we're missing something or really off the mark somewhere?
That's enough in that 50,000 to help with the visitor center.
Right.
If we do that.
Especially if people can open their own doors.
Yeah.
So then, Hope, could I just recap and see if what I'm saying matches with what you've got on your paper?
Yeah, I'm trying to add it right here into the spreadsheet as we go along. I'm just having a problem with summing. Okay, there you go. I'm ready.
Okay, what I have is wayfinding 100,000,
Yes.
beautification 23,000.
I think we said 25.
Yes, sorry, 25. I missed that. 25,000. The Big Springs parking we kept at 187,000.
Hold on for a second. Yeah. 187.
Fire department we put at 25,000.
Yep.
The business services umbrella we put at 50,000.
Yes.
Public art we put at 10,000.
Yes.
And just and then Lakeview. I'm sorry, did we talk about
Nope.
any number? Okay, let's skip over that for right now. We have the 70,000 for the crosswalks that we need to include.
Yes. And the 139,000 for Jefferson Street and Visitor Center.
Yeah, and that one, just because that's not coming out of the 875, I wanted to add that at the end, 872,000, just so we know where we stand versus our income. Let's see, that was everything I had, except for the Lakeview project. I don't know if we want to put in 10,000 to study that and possibly start on something, or what people feel about that.
It looks like Karen just sent a thing out, but I can't.
I did. I just sent you the traffic report that was done from CDOT on that intersection. I mean, the intersection report
Okay, no problem.
with their recommendation, you know, the different ways you could address it.
But this doesn't have money estimated necessarily, right?
You know, I haven't looked at it. I just sent it. I've got so much open on my desk right now, but I thought they did give some, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, there is at somewhere. It's a long report, but there is at one point they do a summary.
And the reality is, we ought to just probably put in a little bit of money to get quotes and get everything approved. And we probably wouldn't be able to move fast enough this year. We've never have moved very
you
fast.
think 10,000 would be okay for that?
Yeah.
Do other people feel okay with 10,000 on that?
This has nothing to do with the traffic circulation study, right?
Well, it could be. You can consider it one and the same if that's what we decided through the process.
Well, okay. I'd like to see increase it a little bit then, because I really want to do this traffic circulation study if we can get it into the budget. I really think it will help with a lot of the other things.
How much do you think it'll be? Do you think it'll be 20 or 30,000?
Let's go with 20. I think 30 is too much.
Yeah, I would say 20 to 25 seems right.
Any thoughts? 20, 25?
25.
Yeah, let's do 25,000.
I mean, it's fine to allocate that. I just want to remind the board that a few years ago, you know, we had talked about allocating like what, $40,000 on another traffic study, and in the end, we decided not to spend it because, like, we didn't want another study. We thought we'd be better spend the money on actually implementing some of the things we needed to do.
Well, that's the idea. This is an empirical study. We're going to try something. We're not going to have a bound report with paper. We're going to have the circulation going for a period of time to see what happens in it. And if it doesn't work in the first 2 or 3 weeks, or there's major problems, we'll stop. It's got to be flexible.
I don't think that was what the agreement is about. Lakeview is either about making a right-hand turn and or doing the project that you're considering, but the $25,000 is not earmarking for your project idea.
I thought
it could be to do
Yeah, I feel like, Ron, it's in there. We're putting a budget placeholder so that if we agree to do that, we would already have the money in the budget for it, but it's not like we're earmarking it for this study, but it's just for the Lakeview intersection, moving that forward in however we decide to do it in the future.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay, cool. Well, do we feel like we can tally this up and then I'll have a vote on the budget?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. And so, Hope, do you have? I'm not looking at the spreadsheet. It's too small for my eyeball.
Yeah, It's a $651,532.57. And that includes, let me just get to the top. It includes $25,000 for beautification, the $139,000 set aside for Jefferson Street, $100,000 for wayfinding, the $15,000 for the electrical hookup that is still in progress right now, $187,000 for Big Springs parking, $25,000 for the fire department, the $5,482.57 being moved from last year to the next year in the website development, unless we don't need to add that. $70,000 for the pedestrian sidewalks, $25,000 for Lakeview, $10,000 for public art, $50,000 for business services, which include COVID and PPE spending or COVID spending, and website. Oh no, just, I need to take that website out. Sorry.
Okay.
So that comes to $646.50. $646,050.
Okay.
So my only comment is, should we have a contingency? Can we use the word contingency or a miscellaneous for another 5 or 10 grand to just make it an even number or whatever?
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Maybe
or 50,
round it up to
660. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would think. Something like that seems fair enough.
Okay.
660.
Yeah.
Yes.
well, the
Oh, wait.
miscellaneous would be like 16,000.
16,000.
14.
I think it would be
sorry, I lost your number.
13,950, perhaps.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that math.
Sure. Okay. Now I'd like to just call for, is there any more discussion on our board on this? Then I'll ask for public discussion. Okay.
We've heated up enough.
Okay. I'd like to give a chance for any public comment on this or discussion. Okay. Could we make a motion to move this to an action item to vote on it?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Third.
Okay.
There's no third.
Oh, sorry.
No, just one sec, just because this is a big vote. Is this the vote now just to move it to an action item, or is it now an action item and then we call for a vote?
Yeah, that's good. It's moving it to an action item.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay.
Okay.
Now we should vote on.
Yeah, so can we make a motion to vote on the budget for 2021 for a total of $660,000?
Make a motion to budget the number for 2021 to $660,000 out of the TIF funds.
I second that.
Okay. Great. I'm going to call off your names. Oops. One more back. Sorry. Brent Tergaskis.
Yes.
Steve Caro.
Yes.
Andrew Duarte.
Yes.
Barb Hart.
Yes.
Rhea Ortner. Rhea? Oh, okay. And Ron Mitchell.
Yes.
Great.
Can I just make a friendly suggestion with that motion? To please make it clear that that 660,000 is for capital, or however you want to put it, related to the TIF fund, just so it's really clear that it's separate from your operating budget.
Sure.
Brent made that in his motion. It was recorded.
For the
Okay, I
TIF.
must have missed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he did say it. Thank you, Karen.
Great.
Wonderful, team. Thank you for getting this done. It's very, very great work in 2 hours. Let me just look at my meeting notes here. I think we have something going on. Is there any other business? No. Then I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.